Welcome, welcome, welcome to another episode of the Pixelated Sausage Show. Hi, 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 hi. How are y'all doing? I'm, of course, your host, Marcus Nez. And today, I've got quite a few games to talk about, including Deathbound, Phantom Spark, Gravitators. Eat your tater tots with some Gravitators. Last Night of Winter, Turn to Mine, and Cat's Request. But before I get to all that, we're going to do what we always do, which is ramble on about a bunch of nonsense. However, the nonsense for today's podcast, this week's podcast, is mainly going to focus on site changes, updates, content, all that jazz, how things are changing and not changing, and so on and so forth, and la da 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 da. So, first and foremost, I have returned to streaming. So far, so good. Even when the game itself is frustrating me, I am sticking with the streaming plan and having an overall good time. I first started last week on Friday with Disney Speedstorm, which I really enjoyed, and the archives of all of these streams will be on YouTube. That is where I'm streaming. So if you do want to watch the streams after the fact, you can do that if you want. I am going to go back and add some timestamps just to cut out our segment. This is the intro, here's all the gameplay, and then here's the outro. But if you want some background noise, they're probably good for that, or you want to just watch them for whatever reason, whatever tickles your fancy. They're there for your viewing and or listening pleasure. But the first stream was Disney Speedstorm. I didn't want to start a whole real, quote-unquote, real game on a Friday when the plan for streaming is to stream weekdays and then take off the weekend to just work on other stuff or not work at all, to relax. And the streaming schedule time-wise is 8 p.m. to 11 p.m. Central Time. You do the math in your head or on paper or on an internet browser to figure out what that means to you. But I'm going to tell you anyway, that would be 6 to 9 Pacific or 9 to midnight Eastern. And all y'all mountain timers, you do you. And then people like Jedi, who live in one of the few places where there's no time zone change, I can't keep a track of what that means. So you definitely have to do the math yourself. Oh, God. But, God, come on. This is horrible podcasting. I could mute, but then it'd just feel weird. Just take it all in. But that is the plan with streaming. Weekdays, 8 to 11 p.m. And I'll just be playing what I play for Attack the Backlog or second runs, etc. And then I was talking it over in this stream from today. I'm recording on Wednesday. A little behind on stuff because I'm doing a whole bunch of things. If you saw my post in YouTube, on YouTube that is, or was in one of the earlier streams, you know, Monday had a pretty serious, scary, probably the scariest to date medical emergency with my father that involved running into the house, calling 911, having them come over, check his vitals, take him to the emergency room. He came home the same day. The general consensus was drink more water, but due to maybe the heat him moving around more than he's used to because he's so sedentary in his ways these days, much to my chagrin. And the anxiety of having a flat tire. I think that all came to wipe him of energy. So I saw him when I was looking under the car to see exactly how to get the jack in place and try a different jack, that he was not looking all right. He was supporting himself with the car for his back and then his two hands on the recycling bin. And so I went to him, asked him if he was okay. His head was curled down and he did not look right. And he was very soft-spoken. And so I grabbed him. I held on to him because it looked like he needed the support. And I could definitely tell then there was something not right. He was not able to support himself. There was no strength there really at all. Told him to breathe. He was breathing slowly, and then he was taking some deep breaths, and those scared the crap out of me, the way he was doing that. He was really wet. And he just became more and more weightless until he was completely weightless, and I'm pretty sure unconscious for a short period of time, because the second I laid him to the ground after he went completely weightless, his face whiter than I've ever seen, unresponsive, ran in the house as fast as I could, grabbed a bottle of water from the fridge and the phone to call 911. I got the water in case, in hopes that he would be conscious and be able to drink something in the meantime while waiting. And I called 911. They came over. They did all their tests at the hospital and so on. And he's back to normal now, but that brief period of time, a minute or so of me holding on to him, feeling him go more and more weightless until he was completely weightless and unresponsive in his face. I in that moment was not sure that I didn't just have the last moments I was going to have with my father. And it was the scariest fucking thing in the world. It was not a pleasant day. It's been a rough week. It's been a rough time since his stroke, and things that he does that don't seem to help, and just lying in bed for extended periods of time, lying in his chair watching TV. I just wish he would get up and move around every now and again. He doesn't want one, but I want to get him a fucking Apple Watch or something that says, hey, stand up every hour. Just fucking stand up and walk back and forth for 2 minutes or something. It's very mentally exhausting, becomes physically exhausting. It's rough. It keeps me from being able to travel too. There are things that I like to do. I keep having to decline certain things. I love my father so much. And I wish he cared more than he seems to care in his current state. So I know that's not exciting news for anyone to hear, but y'all don't care about that. You want to hear me talking about games and movies and blah blah blah. Speaking of movies, also my injury and all that, it's pretty good at this point. There's still some soreness, some not weakness, but the range of motion is not entirely back to normal. I've returned to exercising. I could do most things. I'm not doing deadlifts, or probably not going to do squats for a little bit, because that's part of where it's the most wobbly, and I don't want to exacerbate anything there. But the majority of exercise I can get back to, and I have. I'm easing my way back into it since I have taken an extended period off, not to over exhaust myself, as my mustache hair is getting extra ornery. but the stinging is pretty much entirely gone, which is nice. I can stretch in all of the ways I do every day, except for the basic touch your toes stretch, whatever you call that. Can't do that. That's where my main range, and that's why I wouldn't be able to do deadlifts at all, is that act of bending at the hip is still, I could push it probably if I wanted to and endure some pain, but I'm not going to. I'm going to listen to my body and ease back into everything. If I do an exercise and then it feels not quite ready, I'm just going to say, nope, never mind about this one. I'll stick to these other things. Because this is, outside of anything I'm forgetting, the worst injury I've ever had. But again, it could have been a lot worse. I could have hit my head instead of my side, which I used to try and guilt my father into doing more. Telling him, you know what? I wish I hit my head when I fell instead and died, and then how do you like that? So why don't you fucking get up and move around a little bit? Actually drink more water. Do what they tell you. Stop lying to doctors when they say, oh, yeah, I didn't faint. And I help myself. All by myself. I let myself down and laid on the ground. You fucking liar. You're a liar. He's become a little fibber ever since his stroke. The one thing that was always constant about my father is that I could trust him with anything. He's so honest. Wouldn't even lie about the little things, except for the one time he lied about buying me a large fry at Burger King, and I knew it wasn't a large fry. I know the difference between a large and a medium small fry, and that wasn't large, but he said it was large. And he's still annoyed that I bring that up, but fucking it wasn't large. I know it wasn't large. But back to movies. I have been talking it out and thinking about it. I don't know time frames because I want to ease back into all of this stuff and into new content and so on. I don't want to just dump everything on me all at once. I want to, in this return to streaming, I want to ease back into that and feel like I'm in a groove or whatever you want to call it there before I then jump into something new or the return of something. But with movies, I think I'm going to do a movie podcast. I have no idea what I'm going to call it though, which is why that one's probably going to be a long ways off because I need to find something that works. And then Amazingly Baka will return as well. With both of those shows, I'm thinking each episode will be focused on one thing and then maybe have some lingering things about what I'm watching in addition, seasonally, stuff of that nature with anime, for example. But the focus will be on one movie. So for the movie podcast, I can do an episode about John Carter because I really like that movie. I'd like to talk about that. And then I could, in addition to that, just give little bits about, oh yeah, I'm still watching Psych and la-di-da-di-da. And then the same with anime. And the scheduling for those, if this all plays out, would be Monday anime, Wednesday video games, Friday movies, Sundays Attack the Backlog, unless there's an off week. And with that, it makes me want to even more simplify the video editing of Attack the Backlog episodes, because recording my thoughts in the conversational way I'm doing now, that's easy enough. But I still, not as much as with the older episodes, but I'm still putting a decent amount of time into editing the video versions. But I think I might just have longer chunks, less cutting, and so on. But we'll see about all that. And that's, I think, it in terms of updates and whatnot. So let us get into the games, starting with Deathbound. This is a Souls-like that is okay, and I think in the description it pegs itself as the first party-based Souls-like game. which may give you one thought, but what that really means is in this world, the conceit of it all and your character is that you are, I don't know if you're some otherly being or if you are this original first knight character, but as you're progressing through the game, you will come across these dying souls of people and you will consume them, combine with them, and you are then able to, on the fly, switch between different characters who make up different classes, and that equals your party. So it's not really that you have a group of you attacking. You're not having combo attacks, fighting in that way. You just, instead of having to pick between different playstyles, so in a regular Souls game, you will decide to be a mage and focus on magic abilities and stuff of that nature, sorcery, or the priest stuff, healer things, or you'll be an agile fighter, dual sword it up, or sword and shield, big sword, use a grand sword, two-handed. You'll find the playstyle that works for you and you'll stick with that and focus your build on that, upgrading stats that help that out and leave everything else behind. In this, you can have it all at your fingertips because you can just switch between characters for different fights. You can switch between them during fights and make these kind of combo attacks. And it's a neat idea I like, but the combat itself doesn't feel that great. The visuals aren't that interesting, and the world and lore so far, it starts you off with something I really don't like, which is a slideshow exposition dump, and it lingers on scenes at times. When you fall through this crack, it lingers on you lying on the ground to wake up way longer than it should. And it has some weird choices in it. You start off in this, I think, medical facility, which is full of a lot of tight corridors. It's not the most interesting to explore. But there are all these little details that bug me, and I don't know how other people would feel. When you are being introduced to the game and the mechanics, the way they introduce you to the combat is by having you attack an enemy who is in no way aggressive or trying to hurt you in any way. They're, in fact, scared of you, seemingly. As you get closer to them, they will either back away. I'm going to back away from the mic so you can't hear me. I'm not going to do it. They're either backing away or they lower their head and cover it with their forearms like they're scared of you attacking them. And the game wants you to kill them and use your weapons on them to teach you how to fight. And there's something about that I find very off-putting. It does not endear me to my character when I'm playing. It makes me feel like a little asshole. And all they would have to do to solve that issue is throw in some dialogue. Maybe they didn't. I missed it, but I don't remember them saying anything like, "Oh my God, this person has been consumed by the darkness and they're in constant pain, and I'm just gonna they're not attacking me, but I've got to put them out of their misery." Something along those lines that made me feel like, yes, I'm attacking this non-aggressive being, but I am putting them out of their misery. And maybe I'm just supposed to assume that's what I'm doing, because what else would I be doing? But I don't feel that way. Then when you fight the first boss, in typical Souls fashion, you would assume that it's a pretty powerful boss. It's going to take you a while to defeat it with your current abilities and configuration, weapons, all that. That you can beat them, but the expectation is that you will lose and then you'll continue on after that. It's not a game over. But instead of it working that way, after I got the health bar down to a certain point, maybe a third down,
or 40%, it transitioned to a cutscene of me finishing them off and then us falling down this hole. And I found that weird too. That felt very not Soulsy. But as I kept playing, exploring the environment, the second character I got was this roguish lady who can backstab characters and has a crossbow to fire at a distance. I found it cumbersome and unenjoyable. Fighting basic enemies is very dull. I don't like that when you transition between the different characters, there are no iframes there, so you're vulnerable. And that means you do have to be careful, even if you can dodge and transition at the same time, but that'll leave you vulnerable. But when you just transition on its own, not in a dodge, you kind of raise your hands there and you're like, yeah, I'm transitioning. Look at me, everyone. I'm so cool. Watch me transition. And in that moment, that 2-3 seconds, you're vulnerable. You can't move. You can't cancel out of that. You can't dodge out of that. You just have to let it play out. So I don't like that. It all feels like some good ideas that need a bit more thought behind them, some ironing out. It ultimately feels like a good first draft that needs a revision. It's not bad as it is, but it's hard to recommend it over other options out there, unless you're exhausted. You've exhausted all of those and you just want more. It could be worth trying out, but I would say wait for a sale on this one. It's okay. It's okay. I could see myself continuing to play it. So it's okay. It's just that I can see greatness in it. It's just not there. I look at it and I think, ooh, I wish this was that way. I wish this was that way. And unfortunately, it's not that way. That is, again, Deathbound. Phantom Spark is a time trial-based racing game that feels in gameplay kind of Wipeout-y, but you're just playing by yourself on a track that is of very pleasant, soft pastel colors. A lot of light orangey beiges, greens, blues, soft light colors, purples. And it's very pleasant to look at. And the overall vibe of it is very pleasant. The tracks have a lot of wide spaces to them. There aren't a lot of narrow parts of the tracks and some open areas. And it feels pretty good. You have your basic acceleration, and then you can either let off the gas or hit a brake to deal with turns. And all you're doing is going down these courses, trying to get through them as fast as possible, avoiding every chance that will slow you down and take away from your momentum. And then when you complete a race for the first time, you can then race against your best time, your shadow, and then the shadow of the boss of that area. There are 3 different areas. Once you can level up an area enough and complete it, you can unlock the next one. There's also local multiplayer where you can play split screen or hot potato, whatever you call that. And it's all fine. It feels good and it's overall pleasant. But there's something about the lack of, because it's a time trial game and you're racing against ghosts, but not a lot of ghosts, and There's no way to play or race in a competitive manner against other vehicles. It eventually gets kind of lonely, and I after getting through the first area, I didn't really feel the inclination, the desire to keep playing. I had a good enough time, but I just kind of felt lonely after a while. But that is a very me thing. If you're someone who really likes time trials, then you'll probably get a lot out of this because it does feel good. There is fun to be had in trying to get your best time, because if you, say, crash or drive off an area, a ledge in a run, you have to start over from the very beginning. There aren't any checkpoints. The most fun I had was with the final race of the first area, which is much longer because that means there are way more opportunities for you to screw up and or run into something and crash. So you have to be extra perfect, and you have to be on point for a much longer period of time, because a lot of the other races can be over in 30 seconds. They get longer as you play more, but they're on the shorter side, so you can find that line that really works for you and perfect it, in quotations, well enough with not too much trying. But that final race, you really gotta remember all of the turns, where they come in, what is going to be the perfect line. Should you brake here? Should you let off the gas here? Should you stay on the gas? Can you make it without losing any momentum, and so on? So if you know if you're a time trial person or not, when you play racing games and you have all these different race types, do you look at the time trials and think, oh God, well, I got to do this just to progress, so let me get this over with? Or do you look at time trials and think, yes, this is what I want to do? If you're the latter, Phantom Spark is for you. If not, you probably should avoid it, because that's all it is. Next up, we have Gravitators, which when I started playing it, I thought to myself immediately, this reminds me of one of the Atari Recharge games. What is that? Because this is so much like it. And then I looked it up, and it's, I think, Gravatar. So now the name Gravitators makes more sense, because it's basically just that, but with a tor on it. It's a tater instead of a tar. Something like that. This is an arcade game where you are a ship that is navigating around the space with certain objectives you have to do, whether it be escorting, that's the word I was looking for, escorting a nuke to a destination, and while you're doing that, you are following this path, opening doors for the nuke by exploring the area, defeating enemies, activating switches, and so on and so forth, while finding checkpoints so you don't have to start over from the very beginning, worrying about your fuel and your health, finding points on the map that allow you to recharge those. And it's fine. There's some fun with the visuals, some interesting enemy designs, one that'll grab you with its tongue and chew on you for a bit. But the missions quickly become tedious. I really don't like the escort missions. There are two different ships too, a basic ship that's more agile and more combat based, and then one that's a bit more durable and more defensive based. But the escort missions, and I only played a handful of missions because they started getting very long and tedious, and I wanted them to be shorter so that I wanted there to be more variety. But I'm doing these escort missions that are taking, I don't know, 10 minutes, which feels very long for an arcade game of this nature that is level based, to already be giving me levels that are this tedious. I just wanted to have it spice things up a bit more. But it feels okay. Your ship is surprisingly agile and easy to maneuver. It just felt a bit stretched out in ways. That is Gravitators. Last Night of Winter is, from what I could tell, a Souls-like, but with a top-down, slightly isometric pixel aesthetic with pixel art. It looks okay, but the combat is a mixed bag. I don't like, or the gameplay is a mixed bag. I don't like the combat. I find the combat to be pretty unpleasant to partake in. It's not challenging, but it's very dull and slow and doesn't feel good. The enemies are boring and attacking doesn't feel good. There is a stamina and concentration system, which is maybe the most interesting part of the combat, where attacks that utilize concentration don't take up stamina to use. They take up concentration. And the way you get concentration back is that if you're not in combat, you can just hold the attack button, I think, and it'll charge it up. But you also gain concentration back through regular attacks. So there is this balance between the two, which is a cool system. But the actual combat itself doesn't feel that great, so it doesn't matter. What I do kind of like is the platforming. You have a dodge, which is also kind of a leap, a long jump. And they do some fun things with that in the platforming, having you jump between all these platforms, having them disappear, so you have to be quick and make sure that you're doing everything in a very responsive way. And that feels good. There are moving platforms and ways you have to jump between things and then jump on this platform or jump on this area and then navigate it fast so that you'll be able to jump back on the platform as it's moving along. So they do some fun things with the platforming. The way the world opens up as you're unlocking shortcuts, standard stuff, but it's fun. Not much lore or narrative there. So, and visually it looks all right. I just wish the combat was better. If the combat was engaging and exciting and fun, this could be something. But since the combat is the weakest part of the game and it is a significant part of the game, it really hurts the overall experience. As much as I like the platforming, and I think the world is all right to explore, every time I get to an enemy and then have to fight them, I don't think, ooh, this is going to be fun. I think, let's just get this over with so that I can get on and find out what's behind that door or down those stairs or whatever. And that's not how you want to feel. So, a bit of a shame there, but your mileage may vary. Maybe you'll enjoy the combat enough or find other parts of it engaging. I don't think it's a super expensive game, so it might be worth giving a go if you're feeling curious and you want to support an independent game and developer. Nothing wrong with that. I just wish the combo was better. That is, again, though, Last Night of Winter. It's all right. Some good things, some bad things could be better. Turn to Mine is a puzzle game that has you guiding a robot-y thing to some kind of thing to win the level. Sometimes you have to guide it and help it get through areas that are dangerous. Sometimes it's not connected to you and you have to guide it by flipping blocks and then forcing it to move down a pathway by flipping these blocks that it won't go over, which can be annoying when it's moving around a lot and you're trying to flip things fast enough so that it doesn't go in ways you don't want it to. It was alright, but I wasn't super engaged by the types of puzzles it was throwing at me, so didn't stick with that too long. And then Cat's Request is a point-and-click adventure where I don't know if it's that it's a detective story or you're a detective, but you're a cat who has this anthropomorphic cat who has this companion who's a holograph or something along those lines, and you want to get him a real body. And part of the gameplay is being able to switch between the two, and they can do different things. So the holograph, because they're digital, can early on you come across this lady who sells, I believe, androids for this purpose. She's in a kind of coma, and you can unlock her diary, which you do as the holographic lady. But then you also are able to enter her mind because she's trying to transfer her mind into another body. And you go in there to figure some stuff out. It just seems very confusing and a bit cumbersome, and this story hasn't grabbed me. I don't like the art that much. I don't think the art's terrible, but it has a lot of those typical convoluted adventure game things that aren't making me want to. I'm very finicky with adventure games, and like I've said before, I really need a strong story or strong art to push me through some of the typical tropes and issues that plague adventure games that tend to be inherent in the design of them for whatever reason that people don't want to get out of. And you don't have either of those here, so I look at it and I think, well, I still haven't even played games like Grim Fandango. Why am I going to play this over that? What are you putting on the table? It's not great art. It's not a great story. It's not great puzzle design. So it's not a bad game by any stretch of the imagination. But it's a very typical meh adventure game. That's the most I can say about it. It's an adventure game. There's no hint system either. Give me a hint system. Every adventure game should have a hint system. Give me a fucking hint system. But that's Cat's Request. And that is going to do it for this here exhausted Mark Kuznez. That's who I am again. So it's been a week. So I hope this episode has been good enough despite all that. But that will do it for this here episode of the Pixelated Sausage Show. Once again, to say it again, I am Mark Kuznez. Y'all can find me pretty much everywhere at PX Sausage, though I don't know why you would on any of the social platforms because I don't engage with any of them anymore. I think about them quite a bit, and I think about engaging with them, but then I think, which one do I really stick with? Do I go to Threads and just go all in on the Instagram account and all that? Do I really try and give Blue Sky a shot? Do I stick with Twitter even though Elon Musk makes me want to throw up? Do I TikTok it? Do I put clips from the stream on it? I always think TikTok is the best way to maybe try and grow and just do clips from this show, from anything. And then I just never get around to doing it because I think to myself, I don't want fucking TikTok. That's my TikTok thoughts. But I am everywhere pretty much at PX Sausage, so follow me if you want, and maybe one day you'll be surprised with some post by me. But if you enjoy this here show or any of the stuff I do and what have you, you can support me and my nonsense over at patreon.com/PXS. There you can get a monthly Q&A, some fancy Discord roles, a private Discord channel for the cool kids, as well as random drops and other goodies here and there, depending on your tier, of course. Or you can just support me to support me if you fancy. That is, again, patreon.com/pxs. In addition to the Patreon, you can find links to this site, the YouTube, the Discord, and so much more over at pxsausage.com. That is it. That is all. As always, thank you for watching or listening. I hope you enjoyed this here episode, and I hope you have both a wonderful rest of your day, a lovely rest of your week, and a wonderful weekend. But for now, adios, arrivederci, bye bye.
It's go time.